Today, we're diving into a really big problem, one that's kind of hiding in plain sight, inside the technology that's shaping our world: algorithmic bias.
I mean, think about this for a second. AI is already making massive decisions about our lives. Who gets a loan? Who gets an interview for a job? So what happens when the very code making those calls is, well, biased?
All right, so let's break this down. To really get a handle on the problem, we first need to understand what this bias even is, where it's coming from, and the very real damage it can do.
So what are we actually talking about when we say algorithmic bias? The key thing to know is that this isn't just a random bug or a one-off glitch. No, it's a systematic error. It's something that's literally baked into the system, and it consistently, repeatedly creates unfair outcomes for certain groups of people.
Okay, so where does this stuff even come from? It's not like the AI wakes up one day and decides to be unfair. AI models are like students, you know? They learn from the textbooks we give them. And if those textbooks, the data, are filled with all the historical baggage and inequalities of our world, well, the AI is going to learn those biases as fact. It doesn't know any better.
And this is where it gets really scary, because it creates this vicious cycle. It might start with a simple assumption a developer makes. Then an institution rolls it out. And then, as we interact with that flawed system, we generate more biased data, which just feeds the prejudice right back into the machine, making it even worse over time.
And here's the real kicker. A biased person might make a few bad calls a day, but an algorithm? It can make 1,000,000 biased decisions in the blink of an eye. It doesn't just copy our prejudices, it puts them on steroids, amplifying and speeding them up on a scale that's just staggering.
And look, this isn't some abstract, theoretical problem. This has very real consequences for real people. We're talking about qualified people getting automatically rejected for jobs, deserving families being denied loans, or even getting different healthcare advice, all because of some flawed code. So that's the problem. It's big, it's often invisible. So how in the world do we fight it? Well, that's where the toolkit for detection comes in. We have to be able to shine a light into these dark corners.
Right. So how do you find a flaw that's buried deep inside what's essentially a black box? You can't just look at the code and see it. You have to become a kind of digital detective looking for clues.
And the main tool in our detective kit is something called a fairness audit. Think of it like an ethical stress test for the AI. We poke and prod it. We'll run tests, like a counterfactual test. We'll ask, okay, what if everything is exactly the same, but we just change this one sensitive detail, like an applicant's gender or race? Does the outcome change? If it does, boom, you've just caught the bias red-handed.
Now, to do that detective work well, you really need what's called explainable AI. It's not enough for an AI to just spit out an answer, yes or no. We have to be able to make it show its work. Things like this decision tree here let us see the exact path the AI took to get to its conclusion, and that makes it way easier to find the exact point where things went wrong.
And generally, there are two main ways to open up that black box. You can either use a simpler model from the get-go, one that's designed to be transparent and easy to understand, or you can take a super complex model and use special tools, kind of like interrogation tools, to force it to explain its reasoning after the fact.
Okay, so we found the bias. Awesome. That's a huge first step, but just finding it isn't enough. Now what? How do we actually fix it? That's what we're getting into next, the real strategies for taming this bias and building AI that's genuinely fair.
You know that old saying, garbage in, garbage out? Well, it's absolutely true here. The very first place you have to look is the data. If the foundation is crooked, the whole building will be too. So a huge part of the solution is balancing that data. We can use clever techniques like oversampling, which basically means making copies of data from groups that are underrepresented to make sure their voices are heard just as loudly by the algorithm.
But sometimes you can't get the data perfectly clean. It's just not possible. So what do you do then? Well, you can actually build fairness right into the model's training process. There are some really cool techniques for this. One is called Adversarial Debiasing. It's like you train two AIs at once. One is trying to do the task, and the other, the critic, is trying to catch the first one being biased. They fight it out, and the result is a much fairer model. It's pretty amazing.
But here's the thing, fixing the data and tweaking the code, that's crucial, but it's not the whole story. To really solve this for good, we have to zoom out. This isn't just a tech problem, it's a people problem. We need to look at the bigger picture, the culture, the rules, the whole framework of responsibility. Because at the end of the day, someone has to be accountable. Code doesn't write itself. Data doesn't just appear. We need a clear chain of responsibility. Who's responsible for the data quality? The provider. Who's responsible for a fair design? The builder. And who's responsible for checking the impact it has out in the real world? The company that deploys it. Everyone has a role to play.
And you know what? This is rapidly shifting from being a nice-to-have moral choice to a must-have legal requirement. We're seeing major new regulations coming down the pike, like the EU AI Act. This stuff is getting serious. Soon, things like doing human rights impact assessments or keeping detailed records won't just be good practice, they'll be the law.
And all of this really points to one big, fundamental shift in thinking. We have to stop treating ethics like it's the final inspection on an assembly line, just a little checkbox to tick before you ship the product. It has to be part of the blueprint. It has to be in the DNA of the project from day one. That's ethics by design.
So what does that actually look like in the real world? Well, it means your team isn't just a bunch of engineers. You bring in ethicists, sociologists, people who understand the human impact. It means you are actively going out and talking to the people who will be affected by your system. And it means you're doing ethical check-ins at every single stage of the project, from the first brainstorm to the final rollout.
And really, that leaves us with the most important question of all as we build out this AI-powered future. Every piece of technology is a mirror. It reflects the values of the people who made it. So the real challenge for all of us is to look in that mirror and make absolutely sure that what we see reflected back are values of fairness, of equity, and of justice, not just as an afterthought, but as the very foundation of everything we build.